The actions of our story today begin in an ordinary cafe where a declaration of love is taking place. The guy with glasses was too enthusiastic and shouted at the entire cafe with an offer to start dating. But judging by the girl's face, she was not very happy about this turn of events. And he is still full of optimism because he was finally able to confess to the girl he met at the club. The actions are moved a little earlier when the girl came to him and asked her appa to continue communicating. The action took place in some library, and the boy simply agreed to her proposal. While some guy stood behind and thought that she was very beautiful, our boy invited her to drink coffee. It seems that that guy completely took all the attention for himself and offered to go and eat pasta, while the guy with glasses thought that it was very popular. But she was completely uninterested in that guy and invited Sung-hoon to go with them. The guys who were in this room immediately began to look at him as he took away the most beautiful girl. And now he was completely sure that she liked him. His feelings had told him this since birth. Finally, she stopped being silent and was about to say something. The main character was so glad that she would now agree. But all his hopes can be instantly shattered because it was a negative answer. Judging by his face, the boy did not expect such a turn of events. And she just thought that the guy suddenly asked to meet her, as if he had gone crazy. The main character simply could not understand why she refused, because she treated him so well all the time. She tries to explain to him that apparently the boy has never had a relationship before, but you couldn't start dating a person just because they treat you well. The girl just got ready and wanted to leave, thinking that the guy should know his place. Before she even had time to leave the cafe, she called someone and started telling that the main character seemed to have gone crazy. Moreover, she also laughed at him, saying that she saw no reason why she could date him. And now the boy simply could not understand why she reacted this way to his confession if she had treated him so well all this time. Further actions are transferred to the moment when he was sitting with his friend, who warned him not to arrange a confession. After such a heavy blow of fate, the boy had already managed to drink quite a lot of drinks. A friend tried to console his grief by saying that the girl communicates with everyone like that, but the main character denied everything he said. Sung-hoon just couldn't believe that now he was abandoned, and he had to drink drinks to not think about it. He simply couldn't imagine a girl he could like, and so he decided to just drink so many drinks to definitely go to the next world. But enough time had passed and the drinks had a completely different effect. Now the main character was going to take revenge. His friend understood perfectly well that it was not he who was talking about the beer he drank too much. This idiot was really talking about the place. But he really went crazy and started throwing things off the table, screaming about the place. Damn Korean member of the Avengers team. After which the boy was still escorted to the metro and asked to be careful, but it seemed that he could not stand on his feet at all. His condition was indeed not the best. Everything was blurry before his eyes and he could not understand why there was no one on the subway. When suddenly it turns out that he is not alone here at all, there is some girl behind him. He immediately approached her because he wanted to ask if the metro was working. The boy simply could not understand why everything was so blurry before his eyes and why the lady did not answer him. Suddenly she says that the main character looks like a person who has been through a lot and that the world is full of different people. Suddenly the guy just starts screaming that she is making fun of him or is just going to laugh, and she turns out to have a lot of fun. With such a smile, she asked about the fact that the main character was bullied since childhood. After these words, the boy simply stood in horror and said nothing. But for him it was the most common thing, because the girls constantly laughed at him. It turns out that the ladies always laughed at him and told their friends that they were his girlfriends, and this was a real shame. When suddenly the red-haired lady simply asks if he would like to take revenge on his offenders. Apparently the drinks were still working, and he was yelling that he needed revenge more than ever. Now she becomes even more creepy than before, and says that she did not doubt him. In such cases, she decides to make him try, after which something strange begins to happen. After this, the main character simply falls to the ground, holding his head, and she leaves the metro station. He simply cannot understand what the hell is happening, and then he simply passes out right on the subway. After a long sleep, the main character somehow opens his eyes, and in front of him was already a metro employee who was trying to wake him up. He simply makes a sound as if he was very surprised, and the employee cannot understand what his surprise means. They just wanted to warn him that this was not a place to sleep. The bespectacled man immediately begins to ask for forgiveness because he himself does not understand how he ended up here. After which he simply leaves, warning him that next time it is better not to drink so many drinks. The main character already finds himself in his apartment, lying on the sofa and trying to figure out what the hell was going on all this time. He was just trying to remember everything that happened, starting from the fact that he had been drinking drinks for a long time, and then caused a commotion and some lady asked him to take revenge. But at this moment, the main character decides to focus in more detail because that girl was too strange. When suddenly he remembers her last words before leaving, she asked him to say the status window right after he wakes up. After the main character utters the cherished phrase, and a window actually appears in front of him, which says that the boy has become the country's first education expert. But his surprise knew no bounds. Why the hell some kind of flying screen appeared in front of his face? But still, he decides to try out a new device because it's very cool when you have your own personal flying tablet. All the same, the system tells him that his purpose is to educate the citizens of the country, and now he will become a teacher who has all the relevant powers. And also, when completing tasks, he will be awarded various points which he can spend on improving his characteristics and receiving other rewards. They give him his data in which his characteristics are written. It seems that he is a real weakling who has not yet completed a single task. Sung-hoon just looked at this monitor and thought that it looked like some kind of strange game. He carefully studies the rules of the game, and it turns out that people will not see anything suspicious in his actions. Suddenly, the screen in front of him simply disappeared, and the main character simply could not understand what the hell happened. But it immediately appears after he once again calls the name of the program. Now he remembers about that girl and thinks that she simply gave him this ability after she felt sorry for him. It is this ability that allows the main character to play chess with any person without arousing any suspicion. Once the main character realized his power, he was now going to try out his new abilities in action. Suddenly, a lady appears in front of his door and says that she came here to study. It seems that the main character's dream has finally come true. He asks the girl to pass, and he himself is already thinking that the end has come for her. Damn evil genius. The action moves forward 1 hour earlier, when the main character was sitting on the couch and thinking about something. Still, he calls up the status window again, and this time he became interested in what the notification button does. It turns out that it was possible to write a real message in order to recruit students, but the boy refused to believe it. And of course, the first girl he found there was Jun Hee-en. He was pleasantly surprised that the system found him exactly the one he wanted to find. In any case, he decides to try because there was absolutely nothing to lose, and if it works out, it will be a good bonus. The system notified him that the message had been received, but he still thought it was some kind of nonsense. After which, the system told him that the message had been received, and now the girl was already standing in front of his door and waiting for the specialist. She just wanted to say that she came to class, but she was just too surprised that it turned out to be her appa. And the main character decided to pretend that everything was normal and simply greeted the girl. She was simply shocked that he turned out to be a specialist, but he only liked it when she called him that, as if it were really some kind of profession. He only said that she understood everything correctly and asked her to enter his modest domain. Suddenly, the system appeared and asked the main character to choose the next action because the girl had already come to him. It turns out that there was a detailed plan of action that he had to take, but since this was the first lesson, he decides to go in order. And so he was asked to conduct an examination of the girl's knowledge, and it was necessary to study every part of the brain. He simply cleared his throat and asked the girl for a little attention. It was his job, and in such cases, he asked to discard the fact that they knew each other. His goal was to endow her with knowledge. Of course, she agreed. In such cases, everything goes exactly according to the protagonist's plan, and now he asked to conduct the first test to evaluate her knowledge. But he was simply shocked when he saw her knowledge. He could not even think that she could be so smart. After she finished the beginning, the girl asked if she needed to solve the test completely. Of course, the test had to be passed in full. Then what would be the point of her training if the main character does not understand what he is working with? For some reason, she somehow slowly solved the remaining tasks, and our boy asked her to be a little faster. He even managed to scare the girl, and she agreed with what he said. But now the main character was in shock. After she behaved so arrogantly towards him during the confession, now he became her teacher, and her behavior became completely different. Finally, she solved her starting test, and now the boy asked her to sit on the sofa for now, and then they would decide what to do next. He asked her not to be shy, because now they were communicating as a teacher and a student. She came to gain knowledge, so for now he will check her test. Now the main character was completely confident that the system worked, and he did not need to worry that it was a deception. Still, she had a lot of mistakes and she didn't behave like a smart girl, so he began to solve her problem with behavior, because if this is not solved, then it will be difficult for him to teach her something. And now the main character understands that he is completing the first task. He needed to test her knowledge, and now the test was 12% completed. The check had to be continued further, so he decides to touch on her appearance. She didn't look at all like a person who could boast of her intelligence. Meanwhile, he tried to understand how the system works and for which check he could get the largest amount of interest. But for some reason, she felt uneasy because he condemned her appearance. The guy didn't like this behavior because in other ways, she would never be able to become smarter and learn something. The boy's words turned out to be too serious, and now she was a little scared. The main character just continues his motivational speech and says that they will continue their lessons until she becomes truly smart. Still, she came to terms with the fact that it was his job, and now she agreed that he should do what he thought was necessary. It was better to be smart. In such cases, the boy continues his studies, and it was necessary to divide her answers into subjects in which there were gaps. During the learning process, the main character asked many times what it was like to study with such a smart teacher like him, but she did not give an exact answer. He did not like it, because if she told the truth, she would help him in the learning process. One of the subjects had already been learned, so the main character suggested changing the location a little, and now she was sitting on the sofa with a textbook in her hands. Everything was just fine, but the girl still felt too awkward. He asked her to relax a little and feel at home. And as it turns out, during the learning process, the system shows not only how the characteristics of the main character grow, but also all the other characters. And now our boy faced the most serious choice in his life, because this was the first time he took on a student, and did not know at all how to teach others. Still, he needed to have all the information he needed, so he asked the last time the girl studied science. And she talks about how just yesterday she was sitting in front of her textbooks. The main character was simply shocked because not everyone will talk about what they did their homework. After which he asks about the other teachers she went to, but it turns out that all this time she studied on her own. After that, the boy's face completely changed because he could not expect that such a smart girl like her had never gone to other teachers. The system reported that the knowledge examination was now available, and the girl tried to convince him that she was not lying to him. In this case, he asked her to take a few more tests and she will need to do them for speed. He was just wondering if she could cope with such complex tasks. After which the system gives him detailed instructions on how to carry out the test. It seems that the test was far from being as simple as it might seem. And so the system began a new calculation that was supposed to show how well the girl understands the exact sciences. The main character thought that the results would have to wait for some time, but suddenly the system makes a notification that the test has already been completed. The lady was already tired of so many tasks that needed to be solved, but judging by the tests, the girl was quite smart, but her brain was already boiling, and she had never had a teacher before. And now the boy began to laugh at her that she had been studying for so long that her brain had managed to boil. But still, she decides to make a small confession. Even though she didn't go to additional classes with teachers, she still watched educational videos on the internet. But she still decides to show her what truly hard study is, but she definitely can't expect mercy from him. Remember how at the beginning of the video the girl laughed at the main character, so now it was his turn to laugh. Now this fool came to his classes and he could give her a huge number of tasks that she had to solve. Now he was so happy to say that she was terribly stupid. At first she simply rejected his feelings, and now she was crying because she could not solve the simplest equations. Suddenly another notification from the system. The research was completely completed, and now the girl's characteristics were increased. And the main character was only thinking about the fact that he needed to quickly find her weak point in order to definitely humiliate her knowledge. When suddenly he simply says that the test was over, and now he needs to decide what to do with her. It seemed to him that the girl liked to study with him. Looking at his girlfriend, he even thinks about the fact that she might just turn out to be an excellent student, but only if he uses all his abilities. But for some strange reason, he wants her to ask him to become her teacher, after which he simply calls Hayana's name. The test was completed, but the boy didn't have time to finish when she asked if she really needed to take any more tests. The boy only says that this is not a test, but just a small check, but he was still unsure whether it was worth taking it. Still, the main character was her first teacher, and therefore he did not want to burden her with a huge number of tasks. He turns out to be a rather modern teacher, and he came up with this program specifically for couples, so he didn't know whether she should take this test. It turns out that this is a special manipulation that the main character came up with so that she would ask him to become her teacher. Now he was only waiting for the moment for her to agree. And he was already standing with a smug grin just waiting for consent, because he knew very well that she liked learning from him. And just when he was about to leave, the girl simply shouted that she was going to try his special training program. The boy only asked if she really agreed to go through this stage, but she thought that this could help her in further training. In such cases, the main character begins to smile even angrier than before, and therefore begins to start with the basics. Of course, she agrees. The system showed him detailed instructions for teaching, and the boy really liked it, because now he could become a teacher who plays cards with his students, and it is not to take any responsibility for it at all. She was going to start her lessons right now, and the main character supported this idea. The boy is already fully armed and said that she needs to start by mastering the skills that will help her pass absolutely any exam. It seems that she reacts strangely to this situation, but still agrees to take this damn test to prove that she is also worth something. Of course, he notices that she feels awkward when it comes to studying, as if she had been told all her life that she was worth absolutely nothing. After which he simply begins to read out the instructions that the system showed him, and it seems that it is doing just fine. And the boy is happy that he has such an excellent student like her. He only asked that she remember everything that he told her, and in this case everything would definitely work out for her. They just needed to understand that very moment when a girl knows that she can solve a problem. That's what they focused on. And he turns out to be just an excellent teacher because he understands what the girl couldn't do and tried to help with precisely these tasks. She just needed to ask him for help. Suddenly, a problem really appears that she could not solve, and taking his advice, he says that this is too difficult a task for her. A system appeared behind him again, on which the system skill was loaded. Just in time, the boy decides to use his new ability to take their training to a new level. And yes, this is just perfect for them. Now she studied much more diligently than before. But she absolutely could not understand what the hell was going on here, as if it was not she who was solving the problems, but someone else. And the main character also sees perfectly, as if she were under hypnosis, and now he understands that this is not an easy system to learn. Everything was going just fine, and now the boy says that they can start learning the basics because the girl already had all the knowledge to complete his training program. In such cases, she suggests starting with studying the exact sciences, which is a great idea. Also seems to the main character that this plan is as reliable as a Swiss watch, so we immediately begin training. Now she needed to learn techniques that would help her instantly solve problems that would be on the exams. So far, everything has worked out great for her. But the main character has been teaching the girl all this time for a reason, because he wanted to spend as much time as possible with the queen of the group, Jun Hee-na. All the same, she simply has excellent abilities in studying science. As soon as she read a book, she immediately remembered what was said there. Now the boy wanted to arrange a knowledge test that was supposed to show how well she had learned the material she had learned, but she somehow didn't really want to take the next test. It's okay. The main character also spent a lot of effort and time training her, and if she passes one more small test, then nothing bad will happen to her. And finally, the first stage was completely completed and the exact sciences were studied. What would await her next? The main character also believed that for the first test it was just an excellent result, but he would not stop there and move on to the next stage. And it turns out that now she loves to study, and therefore she herself began to offer books that they would study from. He himself liked the fact that she realized that learning was cool, and therefore suggested going to the sofa and reading this book together. She simply could not believe that now she could really study books with the teacher, but he said that they should read them together, in order to better understand the material covered. And suddenly he received another notification from the system, which said that now the girl had become much stronger and smarter. Now our boy realized that his efforts were not in vain, although from the very beginning he realized that he was a real genius. But still, he warns her that the exam does not count during training, and she will still need to pass it after she returns to her usual training. In such cases, he only says that he will simply conduct training using textbooks and then she will go to her exam. Oddly enough, the girl decides that the main character was completely right. And all this was just another manipulation that worked. Now the girl was ready to study absolutely any textbook, and absolutely any test would be passed. All the same, this system acted like hypnosis. It seems that he was not deceived, and now the girl perceived even the strangest situations as completely normal things. Well, okay. This will only play into his hands, after which he once again calls her name. It seems he has come up with another exam. He only asked the girl to take the test again, and it seems that now she was scared at the mere mention of the exam. But still she had no other choice, so she sat down at the table and only asked if she was making the right decision. And the boy was just thinking that he was able to raise an excellent student. All the training was not in vain, and he was happy that such a smart girl was sitting next to her, and she was also beautiful. He just asked her how it felt to perceive the fact that she had now become so smart and could solve problems that she was previously even afraid to open. The boy only warned her that the test would begin soon, but at the mere mention of this, she began to scream and worry that she would not succeed. But he didn't understand why the hell she was so worried because her past results were simply excellent. While she was sitting there and worried that she wouldn't be able to pass, our main character already understood perfectly well that the test was written just perfectly and deliberately made an ominous appearance so that she would worry more. Still, she perfectly understood that she had done a lot of work that day and had already been able to learn a lot thanks to her teacher. And now he can definitely be proud of himself because he always understood perfectly well that he is just an excellent teacher. He also mentioned that he is much better than those strange teachers on the internet who can never teach anyone. But the girl didn't even know that she had written this test so well, so she was worried as if she would soon go crazy. For the main character, this was still the first student who had been trained to such an extent, and now he was going to bring his work to perfection. It turns out that he liked to laugh at the fact that she was so worried, after which for some reason he simply spat on that sheet, trying to show that her work was simply terrible. But still, this was the first lesson with a teacher, and up to this point she had been studying on her own, so he was not going to seem like a too cruel teacher and showed his kind side. The check was still ongoing, or the main character was deliberately stalling for time so that she would worry more, or she was too worried, and therefore it seemed to her that time was passing so slowly, it was incomprehensible. And now it was time for an additional lesson from the main character. It was necessary to improve her ability to wait. And here is an excellent reason. She had to stop worrying while he was checking her test. She only said that she would try to trust him, but it was too difficult for her, as if she had not done what she was told and was worried about everything early. And then the boy began to worry, because at this rate he could lose his best student. He urgently needed to correct the situation. Still, he understood perfectly well that learning is a complex process and one cannot allow his brain to melt, in which case he simply turns off his new skill. When suddenly another notification comes from the system saying that with the current level of mana it was simply impossible to increase or decrease the level of his skills, it seems the matter is rubbish. In such a situation, the main character tried for a long time to find a way out, but could not come up with anything. In such cases, he simply tries to quickly check all the tasks until the girl has completely spent all her nerves. And she has somehow stopped worrying, you see, because the teacher warned her many times that worrying about exams is a waste of time. The fear still remained, and she simply started talking about how she liked studying exact sciences with the teacher, because he was the only one who agreed to teach her. And he just started smiling evilly again, saying that this is exactly what he was counting on. It's just that the other teachers were too stupid and simply couldn't see that the girl was capable of learning. After a little praise, the test began again, and now it was necessary to think about how the remaining problems were solved correctly, because they were more difficult and made even him think. The system continues to tell him all the detailed information about this girl. It turns out that the stress level has reached a high level, and he even liked it. After all, this was her first exam. Meanwhile, she herself didn't understand what was happening. It seemed like she was so worried that she couldn't pass. But at the same time, she was glad that she had already passed everything and just had to wait for the results. Suddenly, he notices a very serious mistake and begins to get angry because he has already shown her many times how to solve this problem, and she still does not understand. Of course, she now began to be even more afraid and simply asked for forgiveness, promising to fix everything. She just said that it was her first exam and the girl asked for forgiveness, but in such cases he only says that she should not apologize, but rather correct her mistakes. And then everything became much cooler because it was after a difficult task that a whole series of heaps of correct answers began. But the boy is not going to say that she just passed the exam, but decides to scare her a little by the fact that she will have to solve many more problems in order to become better. And she already didn't care at all about this exam. She saw perfectly well that now she had a lot of correct tasks, and she would definitely pass the real test at school, so she didn't need to worry. The main character liked this attitude, because it was much better than just sitting in front of the monitor and watching what some teachers on YouTube were telling her. And now she had already started screaming for this idiot to check her test as soon as possible. It seems that she was already impatient to find out her result as soon as possible. And suddenly a system appears that reports that its knowledge has reached its limit at the moment, so that at the end of the briefing, the main character should have received additional rewards. Still, he asks her if she liked studying with such a cool teacher like him. But the answer was already obvious, of course, that this was much better than studying at school, especially since she was able to learn much more than before. He was simply shocked by this answer, because when she came to him, she had absolutely no knowledge. But now she could calmly solve even the most complex problem. It was no longer possible to say that the girl was stupid. On the contrary, in this test he came across questions that even the teachers forced him to think about, and she solved them. Such a student only pleased him with his results, and he hoped that these trainings would continue, and they would conduct many more classes together. But she agreed. The prospect of becoming the smartest girl in school and passing exams only made her happy. But the main character was much more happy because it was his cunning plan. After she humiliated him and rejected his feelings, he decided to take revenge on her. It seems that he said this out loud. Now she asked him not to become an avenger because she was not going to become an enemy for her teacher. Suddenly, he reminds her that during the instruction, there was absolutely no risk of her getting revenge, so let her calmly continue taking her test. But she could no longer study. It seemed that her whole brain was full of textbooks and notes, and soon her head could explode. Then another message comes from the system that praises the main character for checking this girl's test. Now his energy has been increased to the 3rd level. And now the boy sat and could not understand what was happening. This supposedly meant that she could no longer learn from him. Suddenly, she just shouted for Appa to stop because she really couldn't read these books anymore. And while she is trying to rest after a hard day of studying, we are finishing our video. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe to the channel so that the new part will come out soon.